Hey there, it's Melissa Brunetti, and welcome to the Mind Your Own Karma podcast. Hey there, Karma Crew. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Mind Your Own Karma Beyond the Bandage. If this episode caught your eye, here's what I'm picking up about you. On the outside, you're capable, driven, and holding it all together, but internally, you're tired of running on fumes. You're stuck in that loop of pushing hard, crashing harder, and quietly wondering if this is just how life is supposed to feel. And something in you knows it doesn't have to be this way. Today's guest, Garrett Wood, helps high-achieving, high-masking professionals break free from burnout and reconnect with sustainable balance. Garrett is a clinical hypnotherapist, somatic regulation specialist, and outcome-based coach who integrates neuroscience, subconscious reprogramming, and body-based tools to help people move from survival mode into real embodied thriving. We're digging into the biggest myths around hypnotherapy, how automatic stress responses can actually be updated in real time, and why health, wealth, and relationships don't have to compete with each other. It's time to rip off the bandage and dive in because this episode might just change how you understand burnout and healing altogether. Garrett, welcome to Mind Your Own Karma.
Melissa, thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to this conversation because burnout and masking is such a huge reality for so many. So let's just start by you telling us about you and how you started this work.
Yeah, the person who knows where the line is the one that's crossed it one too many times, right? It's a
Yes,
Hunter S. Thompson kind of quote
that's how
there.
it goes.
Yeah, so I've been one of those people many times. And I thought it was just me at the time because I didn't realize how intense some of this
Mm,
actually was. I was working a big corporate job, hospitality industry, so they're open 20 out
okay.
of the 24 hours a day, which is a lot,
Wow.
7 days a week. I wasn't working all those hours, but it felt like I should be. And it was a pretty production-based company, performance-based. So we had spreadsheets, and I would almost live and die my well-being by like where I was on that spreadsheet every day, every hour sometimes. But I was struggling to make it happen and to keep it up, even though I really valued the work and was passionate and loved what we did. But there was a person on there who'd been with the organization for 20 plus years, and they were always at the top of the charts. And every time I ran into them, I was like, hey, you seem like you have it all together. What's your secret? You're like, oh, just hard work, keep your head down, principles. So I figured, okay, I can do this. I can do this. If he can do it, I can do it, right? But then he was let go suddenly from the
Mm,
organization, surprisingly so. And then 2 weeks later, I was in a meeting with his replacement, and they shared that he'd given so much of himself for so long that without that title, he didn't really have much of identity or anything really worth living for. And so he decided to take his own life after that. And it was in that
wow.
meeting that I had that like kind of wake up call that burnout isn't just long hours and a little bit of cynicism and eye rolling and frustration. It's really serious and it has like really big consequences for some people out there.
Yeah. So you yourself, did you experience the burnout or you just saw what he went through and decided to
Oh no, I've
change?
been burned out many times. And that last round I had just been coming through when I got that news from him. And so that was kind of a big wake up call. So it wasn't too long after that that I opened my own practice in 2018 to help other people go through that process, make sure they can
Awesome.
avoid it or at least recover from it.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario. Yeah.
Awesome. So you work with high achieving, high masking professionals. What drew you to that group and what patterns do you see in that group show up over and over again?
Yeah, a lot of isolation. These are the people that you'd look in a room and you'd be like, wow, they must have it all together. And then behind the scenes, once you get to know them, they share some of their insecurities and anxieties that keep them up at night. Uh, Often we hear about this like Mamba mentality. People are talking about Kobe Bryant, where everybody else would be asleep and he'd be out there on the court shooting free throws. But really, the reason why he's doing it is that because he felt anxious about the next day. And the easiest way to
Mm,
calm himself down was to put in those extra hours of practice. And so it's a coping mechanism to deal with this anxiety, not necessarily a way to get ahead of everybody else. So just these behaviors that we praise as hard work and dedication and grind, but sometimes they're actually just a way of trying to calm our own insecurities, our own nervousness, our own anxieties. And not everybody's privy to that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a better way.
There are definitely better, healthier ways in the long run.
Right.
Sure, every once in a while you're going to hit a rock and a hard place and you're going to have to push through. But if that becomes your only way to be
Yeah.
okay, you're not okay. Well, this
Yeah.
situation's not okay. Yeah.
Yeah. For listeners who might be brand new to hypnotherapy, which is part of what you do,
Mhm.
um, and just as importantly, why or why not use hypnotherapy?
Why not use hypnotherapy? If you've never laughed or cried at a movie, if you've never driven home and been like, wait a minute, how'd I get here? If you've never had a daydream, then hypnotherapy may not be the most powerful tool for you. There's probably better interventions. So that's why not to use hypnotherapy. But if you're like many other people, myself included, if I was to ask you to imagine like a big, yellow, sour, juicy lemon, and all of a sudden you can start feeling the saliva and like you're like, oh, I gotta swallow,
Yep.
and then hypnotherapy is probably going to be a useful tool for them, because it's getting your body into a relaxed, focused state, and then bringing up either positive things to reinforce them or bringing up things that were formerly distressing. But if we can take a distressing image, feeling, experience and have that calm, relaxed body with it, the next time we go into that experience, it's easier to access that calm, relaxed body instead of this fight or flight response. And so for people that always feel like they're on, just being in a state of hypnosis is like restorative, but then also using that state to kind of desensitize yourself to the intensities of, whether it's public speaking or flying or, just that relationship with your boss that feels antagonistic for no good reason.
Yeah.
It's helpful at calming those things down too.
I love that imagery there and the response because I do somatic mindful guided imagery. I'm a practitioner, and so there's a little bit of hypnosis in there. And it's so funny how people look at the movies or what they've seen at the fair, and they really think that that's what hypnotherapy is, you know?
Hmm.
So I always kind of get caught with people, are you going to be a good fit for what I do? Because that's not what I do, you
Yeah,
know? So it's great to have those little tools to like figure out if this person's the right fit for, your practice.
absolutely. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I love those fair shows. They're super entertaining.
they are.
Yeah. But if you want
Yeah.
to know the secret behind it, I don't know if you know this, that the people are in a state of hypnosis. And then there's some really extroverted, uninhibited people. So when that hypnotist is asking for volunteers, that's who they're self-selecting for.
Yes.
Who are the
Oh,
people
yeah.
that are already ready to go to put on a good show for the rest of us? And then
Yeah.
who's already in a state of hypnosis? Because it's a
Yeah.
natural state that we drift in and out of every day.
Yeah. Boy, I wish it was that easy to, when I get clients, like I said, and I'm trying to figure out if they're a good fit, if they just, raise their hand and I could be like, oh, that's going to be a good one. That'd be easy. But anyway,
Yeah.
so a lot of people hear the word hypnosis and it freaks them out. Immediately they tense up and get skeptical. So what do you think people are actually afraid of? And what do you usually discover what do they discover once they experience it?
Yeah, I think people have a misconception about it. They think that there's some external power that someone has over
Yeah.
them. And so it's like
Hmm.
this battle of wills or something. And, all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. You're choosing to give yourself permission to relax into that deep state of focused awareness. And if you don't give yourself permission to do that, you won't experience it. And so if you don't want to have that experience, you're more than welcome to opt out at any time. But there's a lot of people that do this incidentally without knowing it.
Hmm.
And then some people like do it intentionally, but they may not call it hypnosis. Like if we look at a basketball player who's shooting that free throw, you'll see them a lot of times like look at the basket and then they'll bounce the ball a couple times and then they'll look at the basket and they'll bounce the ball a couple times. That bouncing for them is a way to trigger a deep state of focus and awareness and tune everything out so they can just be present with them in that hoop, which they've done a million times before.
Yeah.
But they don't have to worry about the shot clock. They don't have to worry about the scorecard. They don't have to worry about the guy in front of them or the crowd hissing or booing or cheering their name on. And they can just do that shot. And that is a form of hypnosis. It's more that than what you see on TV shows, and
Yeah.
movies. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people call me up and they're like, I want to quit smoking. They think I'm going to just put them to sleep and wave something in front of them and they're going to wake up and they're not going to have to do anything. It's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not how it works. So
Yep.
in your work, you talk about 7 performance domains. Can you walk us through what they are and why they matter when it comes to burnout and long-term success?
Yeah. Um, Burnout isn't just about long hours, although that's part of it. It's not having enough resources you needed to support yourself in doing those long hours. And so sometimes people will burn out because they don't have enough engaging work to do, which is pretty
Mm,
wild. It's not the common belief that we have when we think about burnout.
yeah.
It's like too much, fried at both ends. Ah, and in our culture here in the States, like that's an obvious one to come to because we're always like side hustles and grind culture and, more is better. Here we go. But if someone's understimulated by their work, they don't feel like it's exciting to them in any way, that can cause burnout as well. So, really,
Mm,
it's trying to identify what your own unique nervous system needs are and then being able to accommodate that and align it with the work you have to do. And so some of those are like, your own sensory thresholds, how much sleep your body needs, how much nutrition or movement it needs, how much water it needs. But then it's something that's more complicated than that. Like, what's your attachment style? How do you feel safe working with other people? What are your values and beliefs about yourself and how do they show up at work? If you have insecurities about, if you have a subconscious belief that says, I'm not worthy or I'm not enough or I don't matter, the type of way you show up working is going to be compulsive instead of passionate. And it'll end
mm,
up being unhealthy the way you pursue it because you have to outwork those negative beliefs to try to create enough evidence to challenge them. And then eventually, when it burns up, you just end up confirming them anyway. And so these are
yeah.
kind of the things behind the scenes that not everybody's paying attention to.
Well, maybe we should define burnout because it almost sounds like it could also be boredom.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, boredom would be a feeling of a lack of engagement or feeling like your work doesn't matter. And that's one of the components of burnout, right? It's feeling like, hey, what the heck am I doing with any of this stuff?
Mm,
Not only am I not sure if the work I'm doing is making a difference, even if it is, does that actually even matter to anybody? If that's
mm,
not there, you don't feel connected to that. That's one of the three major components of burnout.
yeah. So when there is burnout, what really is happening in the body and the nervous system when that takes hold?
Yeah, great question. I think the easiest way to kind of think about that would be looking at people's heart rate variability, which is a natural physiological response. When it's really high variability, you're able to handle stress and kind of continue to move forward. Not that stress doesn't affect you or there's not stressors that show up, but you're able to recover from them and adapt and grow and change. But when your heart rate variability is really low, it's indicative that you've been in that space for so long that there's no growth happening, that you're just like
Mm,
breaking even or on autopilot. And instead of
yeah.
being polished up, you're getting ground down. And that shows up in the body. It shows up in your immune system. It shows up in your zest for life, your ability to experience positive emotions. It makes it easier to feel all the negatives and harder to feel all the good.
Yeah. So important. I wish we could start doing some of this training in school with children because
Yeah.
I have autoimmune. I've had surgeries. I've had a lot of things like feelings going on in my body that nobody could figure out what was going on with me when really it was, a lot of internal stuff and things that I had, buried and, programs running in the background and all these things. And I'm unraveling that now over the last 15 years, and getting better little by little, but, not that I've already had, a bunch of surgeries and things like that because of probably my burnout of not being authentically me. That's what was
Yeah.
burning me out was I had lost my authenticity and
Mm.
I was just running on autopilot and everybody else's script, you know? So trying to
And
unravel that over the last 15 years and now trying to help other people do the same.
yeah. And similar to you, I had some physical manifestation of this stuff show up. I remember being on a Friday night, I got off at 9 o'clock and I'd had this hip pain for so long and it would come and go in intensity. So I went to the ER and the attending physician did a palpatory examination of my upper inner groin and was
Mm.
like, oh, there's nothing here. There's nothing wrong
Mm.
here. And it was kind of this like accusatory look on his face that like that was how I was enjoying my Friday night was having him palpate me. And And looking back now, I realize, there was nothing he needed to prescribe me and there was no surgery that was going to help alleviate that discomfort in my body.
Mm,
It was just a sign of stress and discomfort. And
yeah.
all of the reason why the stress was there was some of those subconscious programs that were always running in the background. And so it was really intense, but it's this like mental, emotional, and then physical discomfort. But there's nothing that that doctor was in a position to be able to help me with. So,
Yeah. And I'm
yeah.
waiting for the day that they realize that there's more to healing some of this stuff, especially if they can't find anything wrong with you. You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
it's a little frustrating, but
Yeah. More integrative approach would be nice.
yeah,
In
definitely.
like 1974, there's a guy, George Engel, who talked about the biopsychosocial model. He said the medical model was painting itself into a corner because they were not paying attention to the mental, emotional, and social
Yeah.
aspects and components of health. And I think we're coming around to it now, right?
Yeah.
And so your
Yeah.
podcast, your audience is getting exposed to that, which is nice. So,
Yeah, definitely. So, how do subconscious beliefs and attachment patterns, how do they drive that boom and bust cycle, even when someone is doing all the right things or feeling like they're doing all the right things?
yeah. So there's incidents and then there's our response to the incidences. The more secure we are in our attachment, the easier it is to just have the incident happen and not create an implied meaning from it. So if
Mm,
someone was like, "Hey, I really like your shirt today." If you have a secure system, a secure attachment, you'd be like, "Thanks. I like it too. I appreciate it. Excellent." And then move on.
yeah.
If you're less secure, you might be like, "Huh, they never said that about any of my other shirts before. What does that mean about this?" Oh no. And now we're like in this state of thinking about it. And the intensity of those thoughts sometimes keys us up to that fight or flight or frustration. Um, and so maybe it creates an avoidant response or, an anxious one where you want to get closer to that person. But either way, that extra effort takes a toll on your nervous system. It ramps that stress nos up just a little bit. Versus if you're more secure, you're just like, yeah, thanks, man. It's great. Appreciate it. Yeah. I got way more like it. You'll see another one tomorrow, and move on with your day.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
And so you've said that we can update our automatic responses in real time. So what does that look like? And what role does somatic regulation play in this process?
Yeah. So if you're having those thoughts about, uh-oh, what does that mean? He didn't say that about my shirt yesterday.
Mhm.
We could do a cognitive behavioral therapy intervention. We could challenge those thoughts in real time. We could be like, oh, well, this is a silly thought. He's not meaning it. What? You don't know what he's thinking. How could you know? But when you're in a heightened state, it's hard to have a rational conversation with yourself.
Mhm.
It's much easier to do that after the fact when you've calmed down, you've well rested, you're well fed. But even in that moment, we don't have to wait until we've had a full night's of sleep. We could do something instead of arguing with ourselves. Oh, you're right, you're wrong. Having this like drawn out debate, which just adds more stress. Um, we could do an intervention that affects like the bottom up instead of the top down. And so sometimes that's, breath work, which is really powerful for people. But sometimes they're so keyed up that they can't take a deep breath. And so
Mhm.
even trying that makes it even harder. And
Yeah.
so sometimes doing something that actually makes it easier to take a deep breath, like a diaphragm release or intervention that way, is a really powerful tool. There's some
Mhm.
fun, like incognito ones, so you could do it in real time and no one would even know that you're doing it because
Yeah.
it's so subtle but so effective. So those are some of my
Yes.
favorites. Yeah,
Yeah. That's what I use too with my clients. It's
yeah.
amazing. It's so my favorite story, I do ultrasound 3 days a week. So I am in the medical field. And there's this doctor that was just horrible to work with and just and my anxiety would go up when I'd have to go see her. And I was like, okay, just do the breathing, just, soft belly breath. And so I'm doing it as I'm like waiting for her to acknowledge me. And she spins around in her chair and she's like, you look so beautiful today. And I was just like, what just happened? Like, it was
Mm,
so weird. And then I use that all the time with her because I could walk in the room and just feel where her tension level was at. And so I would just start doing that breath and it would like at least, maybe it wouldn't alleviate it 100% a lot of times, but it would certainly bring it down like a bunch of notches, to where it
yeah,
was better for me. So
yeah.
it's
And it sounds like
amazing.
easier for her to kind of get into a
Yeah.
relaxed state too, because if you're not
Hmm.
relaxed and she's not relaxed, now it's like, everyone's getting,
Right. Oh, definitely.
yeah,
Definitely. Yeah. But it's a great like tool. I don't know, you just feel the energy change in the room just by doing the breath.
absolutely,
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
crazy.
Yeah.
Can you share one simple somatic regulation tool that we could try and to relieve stress and overwhelm?
Yeah. I saw one of my favorite, another incognito one that's elicits the relaxation response. Um, you know, when you have hot water, you can feel something's cold. When something's cold, you can feel hot pretty quickly. That contrast our brain can
Yeah.
pick up on. Versus like just subtly more hot isn't always easier to tell. So something we can do for feeling tense is forward feed that loop. So we could create intentionally even more tension in our body, and then relax it all together. So something that I think is really fun is if someone wants to try to clench their jaw, clench their fists, tighten their abdomen, like they're going to get patted in the stomach pretty hard, and then contract their anterior and posterior pelvic floor. So they're trying to hold in
Mm.
our fluids and our solids that come out of us. If you hold all that in with a lot of tension, and then we take a deep breath in, and then as we release that breath, we slowly or quickly relax all of those tensors.
Mm.
And then we repeat that. Take another full deep breath in and clench everything, and then exhale and release everything. It's a nice way that every time we release, we're able to carry our nervous system along where it can relax deeper and deeper with each one, taking that extra tension that we felt down every time, which is pretty powerful.
Yeah. What do you do when you get a client whose nervous system is so locked down that they just can't connect?
Mm, yeah. Sometimes people need a more active way of doing that. So, in really large settings, the easiest way to get a lot of people to regulate themselves is through shared movement to a rhythm. And so if you go to a concert and you're like, wow, it's like this, spiritual experience. And at church, there's a spiritual experience. We're singing, we're vibrating, we're all there together having a shared experience, and it does something. It can be energetic, it could be soothing, it could be angry. But having that ability to have something that's external and internal mirrored back to each other is really powerful. So sometimes just taking an action, getting them to hum a song that they know the words to. Maybe it's happy birthday, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's, tapping to a beat that they can follow along with. Anything they can do to get out of their head and into their body and focus that attention
Mm.
on it, and then create a physiological response. Once they're there, then it's easier to move it around. We can go from angry to sad to frustrated really quick once we have some of that
Yeah.
attunement first. Yeah.
Yeah. I know a lot of people are just locked down because it's survival mode. That's what they've always known, they're just waiting for the next punch, and so they are tense.
Yep.
And it's scary to let go and allow and feel and be curious about what's happening in the body. It
Yeah.
can be a very, very scary place. What do you say
Absolutely.
to people that are scared of the healing process, whatever process it is that they decide to do?
It is scary. Change is scary. And a lot of people talk about comfort zone versus growth zone and like how do we move from one into the other. And a lot of times people feel like they're being pushed or pulled or like, shoved out of the nest kind of.
Yeah.
But if we really were in the real world and we took someone and put them really high up off the ground and said, you got to get over there across this very narrow plank, even though they know how to walk and put one foot in front of the other, the higher it is, the bigger the risk feels because of that change. It doesn't matter their skill or their strength or their ability or their desire, even. It's not safe enough. And so
Mhm.
sometimes if we can add more safety, it makes it much easier to make that change. So whatever that feels like for that person.
Yeah, because I know in my work, I feel like as soon as there's resistance, we're not going to move forward. The resistance
Nope.
just causes more resistance. So,
Yep.
yeah, we can only go as fast as the slowest part of them wants to go. So,
I
that
love
can be
that.
frustrating for a lot of people, because they
Yeah.
want to
We
get
can
better fast.
we can only go as fast as the slowest part. In fact, the fastest we can go is with the speed of the slowest part. I love that.
Yeah,
That's yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So how do you help clients move out of the belief that they have to choose between health and wealth and relationships and all the things?
Yeah. Sometimes we just kind of do a little mental game like, hey, if you carried on for the next 10 years of what the last 2 weeks looked like, what's that going to feel like? You
Mm,
know? If instead we chose to like honor our well-being and recognize that sustainable long-term success actually comes through our well-being instead of at its expense, what are the next 2 weeks going to feel like? What are the next 2 months, 2 years, 20 years going to feel like? And which one of those feels like it's worth getting curious about?
yeah. Yeah. Trading long-term suffering or maybe short-term pain to get better, you know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people have to be, sick and tired of feeling sick and tired before they can, their fear of the way they feel right now has to be more than the fear of them actually moving forward and stepping out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's scary if you feel like you're trying everything you can and you're barely keeping it together. Sometimes it feels like if you're going to slow down, oh, you're going to lose everything,
Yep.
right? And I think,
Yep.
if you really appreciate all those things, it's really hard. But you don't necessarily have to slow down in a way that compromises all that stuff. We could just figure out a way to make it easier to take a break in between.
Yeah. That sounds nice. And not so scary. Can you share a story of someone who came to you like deeply burned out and what actually shifted?
Oh, yeah, tons of them. But the one that comes to mind right now, which I think is like really interesting, two actually. One is a person who's kind of feeling agoraphobic on their drive into work. They would have this like existential dread as they're driving into work. And so they come in and we're thinking together out loud, like, is it the work that I'm dreading going in? Is it my relationship with my clients and my boss, my colleagues, the work itself? What I have to do to prepare for it? Is it the traffic? Is it like being on the 405 with like an hour and a half of traffic? What is happening here that's creating this like
Mm,
response? And luckily, they were wearing a glucose monitor, which is really interesting. And so, 45 minutes into their drive, their breakfast coffee and Danish would wear off and their blood sugar would crash. And that feeling was what was actually causing it,
uh,
the physiological change in their blood glucose levels. So, we added some protein in their diet, and boom, all of a sudden, all that existential dread's gone and everything was fine. It's like my favorite
wow.
example because it's so silly and so simple, but had that gone on for longer, she probably would have developed some like very real fears and phobias about driving and or um, her workplace.
Yeah,
So yeah. And then
definitely.
another one, there was two people I worked with. They're in a nice office building. They always did their feedback sessions weekly in this kind of fishbowl, right, where it's the conference room with all the glass around and that glass is pretty reverberative, so it got kind of loud in there. And stakes always feel high when you're getting a performance review, and
Yeah.
so people are always on edge anyway. Um, but we tried everything because it felt like these two people could just not get along, and they didn't understand it because they felt like they had so much in common. But there is real animosity between these two people. So eventually, on a whim, they ended up doing a performance review on the way to get coffee outside the building. Walked over, came back, and it felt completely different.
Wow.
Um, we went through a sensory threshold assessment for both of those individuals, and we found out that both of them have a really low threshold for sound. So any sound is like
Mm,
puts them on edge, right? So some people they'll listen to their partner chewing their food and they're like, I want to murder this person I love because it's just like the misophonia gets to the
yep.
that's a normal variation in human, sensory things. So both of them had a very low threshold. So any little sound, and in that room, it was really bad. Now they're friends. They're friends. Their kids hang out with each other on the weekends. They go to after dinner drinks together now. But
That's
for a
funny.
long time, they were like their frenemies, their bosses. They're like, at odds with each other. So it's really interesting the things that contribute to all these like, stressors that we go through every day.
Yeah. So talk about your practice. Like what would somebody expect when they come to see you for the first time? Do you do consults?
Yeah, we start off with a consult. We kind of go, what's going on? How would you know if it was better? What would that look like? And then how long has it been this way? And when was it better? Because those kind of give us clues about what's
Mhm.
going on. And then we kind of go through the A3 framework, which is just a simple way of being like, okay, there's so many things that could help benefit this person. How do we whittle it down to what will benefit them the most with where they're at right now? And so we're going to go through our assessment process, know what their nervous system needs, and then figure out in their day to day how we can easily accommodate that. And once from there, we can be like, okay, now let's look at how we have to work and what we need to get done and see if we can make sure we close that gap as much as possible.
Yeah. And so are you using hypnosis and somatic therapy? And so what techniques are you using?
Yeah. So we'll talk about their stressors and we'll talk about how to reason through and like maybe problem solve some of that stuff. But before we can do any of that, we need to be in a regulated state. So we'll talk a lot about somatic regulation and tools and techniques to do it so we can get there together. Then we can talk about all the feelings and emotions that, psycho and emotional pieces of it and what shows up. And then we'll talk about, okay, now what can we do about it? That like rational, reasonable part. And so we kind of try to follow that step every time. And then the hypnosis part is really fun because if they're keyed up and they can't get there even with those somatic regulation, okay, great. We need to be able to do something to get you into that calm, relaxed, focused state. And so we'll practice that too.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who's skeptical about hypnosis and somatic work, but feels curious after listening to this conversation?
Try it. Find someone that you feel like you can relate to, that you appreciate, how they show up. Because the most important part of any relationship is that, like, or of any therapeutic intervention is the relationship you have with that practitioner. So if you really vibe with them, you appreciate them as a human, that's probably the best way to get started.
Okay. And where can we find you?
Yeah, if someone wants to be really professional, they can follow me on the professional network, LinkedIn. I'm on there. If they want to be a little bit more personable, I'm on Instagram, where they can just reach out to my website as well. And all that's Gnosis Therapy.
Okay, so we will have all those links in the show notes. Anything else that I've missed that you want to bring up about what you
Yeah,
do?
if you're wondering, hey, is this kind of stuff for me? The question is, if I kept going the way I've been going, am I excited about what's coming for me? Or
Yeah,
does something else need to change? And what is that something else? I don't know. Let's get curious
yeah,
and find out together, right?
yeah. What's it cost you already up until now? What does it
Yeah,
cost you? Yeah. So thanks so much for just bringing clarity to hypnosis and talking about that a little bit and just the insight in this conversation. And I know the listeners will be looking for you and hopefully get in touch with you if they feel the connection there.
excellent. Yeah.
If Garrett's perspective on burnout and subconscious reprogramming resonated with you, you'll find all of his links waiting in the show notes. Go connect with him, dive deeper, and see what his work could open up for you. And if you're listening and thinking, I've got a healing modality the Karma Crew needs to hear about, I would love to know. You can reach out to me at mindyourownkarma@gmail.com to be considered as a future guest on Mind Your Own Karma Beyond the Bandage. Before we close, I will leave you with this. Somatic mindful guided imagery, the work that I do, offers a safe, powerful way to access and reprogram the subconscious patterns behind burnout, trauma, and self sabotage. If you're ready to explore that deeper layer of healing, you can learn more at somatichealingjourneys.com. Thanks for listening today, Karma Crew. And as always, take what you need and leave what you don't. And always remember to mind your own karma. I'll see you next time.
Find your own karma, stay in your light. Everyone's fighting their own quiet fight. I found my fire in letting go. Every shadow taught my soul to grow. Take what you need, leave what you don't, and always remember to mind your own karma.